Hello and welcome to Tales from the Paper Darkness, Gothic short stories and poems by Derwin Seraphine. Tonight's episode: Pumpkins. Pumpkins. Are you sure these are the ones you want? The cashier looked at them skeptically. Her hand hovered just over the cracked and scuffed plastic basket above the largest of the two pumpkins. Almost touching it, but not quite. Darrell looked at his watch impatiently before looking back over towards the car. It was getting late, and they really didn't have time for this. Yes, of course, Teresa smiled encouragingly at the cashier. It wasn't as if there had been much of a choice out there. It was the day before Halloween, and most of the pumpkin patch had been picked clean by eager families days ago. Still, the cashier's hand hovered just over the plump orange squash and its slightly smaller twin. She opened her mouth a couple of times, but no sound came out. Why don't you start packing up, Cassandra? I'll help these lovely people out. The cashier rushed off as the manager beamed brightly at them through her plastic retail smile. Did you find everything you were looking for? The usual retail question sprung easily from the retail smile, and Teresa breathed a sigh of relief. Yes, thank you. It had taken them a long time to find what they were looking for, but they had found them, eventually. The two main fields of the pumpkin patch had very few offerings left, and they had almost given up. But she had been determined not to go home empty-handed. It was Halloween season, and Halloween needed pumpkins. At the back of the field, partially hidden in the shadows, they had finally seen it, a little gate leading to a smaller, shady grove. There they had found their treasure, round, ripe, and ready. Pumpkins. Have a good night, the manager chirped as she held out the carrier bags towards their waiting hands. Within moments they were back in the car, pumpkins bundled up in the back seat as they drove home in the dark. The fire blazed as Teresa folded her legs beneath her by the coffee table. The pumpkins sat in front of her alongside a glass of rich red wine and a sharp carving knife. Darrell grinned as he watched her brandishing the Sharpie in her hand. With the tip of her tongue poking ever so slightly out of the corner of her mouth, she concentrated on the orange canvas in front of her. It had become a tradition over the years, their own little pre-Halloween night. A movie, a fire, and the pumpkins. Neither one of them were watching the screen as the stalker slashed his way through the background characters. She was intent on her designs, while he was watching her. Darrell grinned when she finally sat back triumphantly. All done? She nodded, reaching for the wine glass with a smile. Nudging her out of the way, Darrell picked up the knife. It was his turn to lead their little ritual. Kissing him on the cheek, Teresa stood up and made her way to the kitchen. What they needed now was some popcorn. Something sweet to go with the smoky tang of the fire and the deep, rich warmth of the wine. As Darrell started on the largest of the two pumpkins, Teresa opened the microwave. As she closed the door and pressed the start button, he pushed the knife sharply into the first of the black lines around the thick green stalk. Teresa flinched at the sudden pain behind her eyes, a sharp stabbing pain from her temple blinding her. She stumbled back against the countertop, her hands grasping at the bright burning flash of nerve endings beneath her skin. The sensation cut through her skull as she felt the wetness against her fingertips. Her first scream died behind the sounds of the widescreen TV in the other room. The pain spread through her as she collapsed onto the floor. When Darrell finally finished his carving, he found her body on the kitchen floor. The design she had worked so hard on, the design that he had followed so faithfully, carved perfectly over her face. A single candle flickered from inside her skull, illuminating her artwork, which danced on the walls around them. The light cast shadows onto the bowl of her brains on the counter, beside the microwave, and the cooling popcorn, as he collapsed in the doorway. That was Pumpkins, which can be found in Tales from Behind the Wallpaper by Derwin Seraphine, available on Kindle or paperback from Amazon. Thank you for listening.